What's up, y'all? I'm back. This is probably the sixth video out of a series I've been recording without really uploading them or editing them yet. I'll probably edit them out of order and upload them out of order. I think this is the first one I'm gonna do right away though. It's about Ranger Reject. Cheers. So, Ranger Reject's a manga I've been reading for a while, right? Because in context, when I first got into college, one of my friends that I met really got me into quintessential quintuplets. And after I finished it, I was like, hey, what else is the author doing? And I checked out, he's doing this thing called Ranger Reject. It's kind of like Power Rangers, that's what I heard. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I was reading it, I got up to date, it's like, you know, I kind of fucking like this. It's kind of clean. But then, I think it was during the Infinity Academy arc. It's not that I really fell off, I got a little bit bored of it, because it was a little bit slow. But then I got into Tokusatsu, and you know, getting into Sentai, I realized a more one-inspired Ranger Reject, and I gained a new appreciation for it. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because recently a lot of its bigger Toku elements have really come to the forefront. And at the same time, since the anime came out, I remember the Toku community specifically was talking a lot about it in relation to how it's a parody of Sentai, and it's like, or Power Rangers, but it's the boys, and I don't really like that misconception. Because I get where it comes from, right? I get where it comes from. That's kind of how it was sold to me in relation to Sentai and Power Rangers. But that's not what Ranger Reject is about. It's not just a story where the Rangers are bad and then the foot soldiers are good, right? It's not as simple as that. Because the executives are, okay, this is full spoilers for Ranger Reject up until the latest chapter. I don't remember which chapter it is. I just read it the other day, but I don't remember the number. I'll put it up here so that in the future you'll know where what chapters I'm working with. But then the executives appeared, and they're not good guys, right? They're bad guys. And yeah, it just goes to show that it's not just about the good guys being bad and the bad guys being good. Because also, you know, a lot of the Rangers are good. Like, you know, Hisui, Chidori, those guys are good. The Neo Rangers are questionably good. But it's about what's going on that's the issue, like the system they're working with. I feel like, rather I should say, the description I landed on to best describe what Ranger Reject is really about, it's kind of a criticism of hyper-consumerism, using Sentai and Tokusatsu as kind of a framework to frame it with. And obviously, you know, it has to be a battle manga, so you added a little bit of subversive elements in there, right? But it's really about that, at least from what I see. And one of the biggest things that points me to this direction is the fact that the Rangers themselves, like the Dragon Keepers, are very, very old school. Like, they're an old school Sentai team. They don't really have the big gimmicks that these new teams have. Like they don't have these collectible little gimmicks that you can swap out to transform or whatever, right? They don't have this. Let me turn it off so it doesn't keep on doing the noise. They don't have these, right? But this is kind of a staple of modern Sentai and modern Tokusatsu in general. They're very toyetic. And again, not to say that's a bad thing. You guys know my thoughts on this already. But it's like they just have their divine tools, right? And it's just them. There's no sixth Ranger. They try, there are the Neo Rangers. That's a different thing. I'll touch on them later. There is no sixth Ranger. It's just 5 of them. And Sentai fans would know that the Dragon Keepers are really inspired by the Go Rangers. Especially with stuff like their capes, their designs, but I'd also argue that they're very heavily inspired by the Time Rangers. For Power Rangers fans, those are the guys that turned into Power Rangers Time Force. Sorry, that's my oven. I got some chicken cooking up. But they're really inspired by them too because, well, self-explanatory, isn't it? If you know what the Time Rangers look like, they're right here, right? You can see the helmets, the similarity between the Time Rangers and the Dragon Keepers, right? You can see it. You can see it in their helmets. And also, there's their little cannon attack. I noticed this more when the anime came out, the trailer, because we saw them using this cannon as a finisher. And then, I mean, as a Time Ranger fan, I noticed that it looks exactly like the Voltec bazooka that the Time Rangers use. Like, you can even see the Rangers are like arranged in the same order. Like, holding first, like, two of them are squatting at the front, two of them are like standing on each side, and then the red guy is in the middle holding it. Kind of obvious, right? But then again, a lot of other old school Sentai teams did use this cannon thing. So it's not just a Time Ranger thing. It's not just the Voltec bazooka. The Go Rangers used a similar thing. Jaka Dengekitai did a similar thing. So it's not just them. But yeah, again, from what it looks like, they're all really old school. Because, like I already mentioned, no collectible gimmicks. But they all transform not in the modern way where there's like, they all have their own transforming little toy. Oh fuck. But you know, my example is the Dawn Brothers Avataro gears, because it's the ones I actually have for Sentai, for the whole team. But they just transform. Like, that's it. They don't have a specific item that helps them transform. They just do because they have the power of the, you know, being able to use the divine tools, just like old school Tokusatsu, you know. They just transform. The belt appears on them. They say Henshin, and they just transform. That's it, right? It's very old school, and not just old school in general. I think it's just harkening back to the beginnings, because Sentai fans would know, Sentai didn't always have the giant robots, the Megazords, right? The first two seasons, Go Ranger and Jaka didn't have them. It started with Battle Fever J. I think it was called the Battle Fever Robo or something. They didn't have these, like, the mechs. I think I'm just gonna start building the King Oja mech while I record this. But yeah, they didn't have that. And likewise, the Dragon Keepers don't have a mech either. At least not as far as we know. As far as we know, it's just, it really is just them, just the guys. They don't have, oh fuck, a big mech. Which, again, harkens back to the originals. I gotta wonder, part of me wonders why. Because it's not like the mechs are unpopular. People fucking love the mechs in Sentai. But maybe, again, it's just Hariba that doesn't like them. Maybe he's just a bigger fan of the old school stuff. Actually, it's kind of a pain to build this while I'm talking. Yeah, maybe he's just a fan of the old school stuff. Or maybe he's trying to criticize how these, like, how the spirit of these old shows kind of got not corrupted, but turned into something else. Hyper-consumerism. But instead of criticizing the toyetic nature, because, you know, it kind of gets turned into something else, people hating modern Tokusatsu. Because, you know, Hariba does not hate modern Tokusatsu. You can obviously tell, right? But it's very, very on the nose with how the show version of the Keepers gets kind of shoved in your face at the start, and then kind of blurs into the background where when the actual, like, battle between the Keepers and D starts taking precedence. But then when that's already established, you get stuff like the cult, the Falipon's cult. Then after that, we got the current arc with the Neo Rangers, right? Which are, you can see the Neo Rangers right here, right? Look at their helmets. Kamen Rider fans know where I'm going with this, but if you don't know, they're very heavily based on Kamen Rider Hibiki. I don't even need to explain that. It's pretty self-explanatory. But also, Axel Ablaze also pointed out to me that they're also kind of similar to these guys in Kamen Rider Wizard. I haven't seen Wizard, and since these guys aren't the main guys in Wizard, I didn't really know. I just thought about Hibiki, but that's also a good catch. I feel like the Neo Rangers, while they do, like, have the Ranger name, they do kind of harken back to Kamen Rider more so than they do to Sentai. not only in the designs, because you know they look like Hibiki, but they also have the scarf, because you know the Kamen Rider muffler, the classic. But also just their whole gimmick, right? They're not good, they're not evil. They protect the people, they protect the town, right? It was in the recent chapters that they had this, and that's kind of Kamen Rider's whole thing. Like, you know, there's a famous quote right here, or human life is more important than even peace and justice. It's like they'll protect the invaders. They're just here to protect people, right? And also stand against the Rangers, but that's besides the point. That's because they're antagonists with an asterisk. But I kind of like that idea. Although I would kind of like to see them kind of acting more independently. But you know, recently Kamen Rider has. Sorry about that. My phone ran out of battery, so I had to recharge it. But like I was saying, Kamen Riders have been working as teams recently, so yeah, they're pretty similar to that. But also, something I wanted to talk about is how Kamen Riders tend to use the powers of their villains. Like, their powers are sourced, or typically, they're sourced from villains. Like, obviously, most Showa Riders, they're the same species as the Kaijin they battle. But also, in more recent examples, like obviously the currently airing series, Gav, Shoma is a granite, and he's fighting the granites, right? Gotchard is a human merging with chemis, which is the same thing that creates the amalgams, right? Same thing with an asterisk, you know. But yeah, and in the case of the Neo Rangers, you got people like actual executives that are working with them, that are among their ranks. I think that's pretty cool. And also people that, you know, not people that, they in general do sympathize with the invaders. So I think it's pretty cool to integrate Kamen Rider in there. Although I do wonder if he'll ever integrate Ultraman in there, because Subaraya isn't exactly as much of a massive corporate giant as Toei is, right? Especially globally, they're not as stingy with the Ultraman license as Toei is with Kamen Rider and Sentai. Well, Hasbro is with Sentai. Toei is more along the Kamen Rider lines, but because of Power Rangers, you know. I'm not trying to get into that whole mess right now. Sentai fans already know enough about that. Like, we barely get stuff like this over here, let alone DVD releases. But yeah, I like that. I also think that Shippo, the big guy, he kind of reminds me of Big One. I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, because they are numbered. There's like 1, 2, 3, because you know, primary writer, secondary writer, tertiary writer. It's kind of a thing that a writer has going on always. But also the way he always announces himself, like you can see it in these two panels here. It's like, I'm number 1. It reminds me of how Big One would just like flip onto the scene, and Jaka, he's like, Big One. I probably got a clip of it right here. It reminds me of that. Maybe that's intentional, because again, Haruba's really inspired by, or takes a lot of inspiration from Goranger and Jaka when it comes to how he portrays the Rangers in Ranger Reject. And I also like, you know, how the Keepers actually have their own Sentai. Like, I think it was Ryujin Sentai Dragon Keepers. That was pretty fucking cool. But then there's what's happening currently, which is, spoilers again. I'm just playing around with the mech thing. It's the way that the actual show, like in canon, is something that was made before the actual invaders and everything, all the actual powers, and that's what motivated them to actually create everything, so that the show could be endlessly ongoing, like for money, right? It's kind of a criticism again of how Toei keeps these franchises ongoing forever, and it kind of loses the identity that they used to have just for the sake of money, because that is why they exist, right? They're for money, they're for toy sales, right? Kamen Rider would have ended like fuck, like multiple times over, because I think Amazon at one point was meant to be the final season. Sky Rider I think was meant to be the final season at one point. So Super 1 was originally going to be the final season, then Kamen Rider Black, then Agito was also thought to be the final one. Blade was also thought to be the final one, and so on and so forth, right? I think by the time they got to Decade and Double, they realized like we're not ending Kamen Rider. We're not ending that shit. And then likewise with Sentai, right? It was thanks to Marvel that Sentai even exists as we know it now, right? Because it had ended with Jacko with season 2. But then, you know, Marvel came in, Stan Lee really liked it. They helped him work on the Spider-Man show, and then they helped Toei do the rest. Like they helped with Battle Fever, with all these other shows like Sun Vulcan, etc., etc. And then it just kind of kept going, especially after Kamen Rider went on hiatus, like after Super 1. Toei pretty much only had Metal Heroes and Sentai. That's what was keeping the Tokusatsu machine turning. Sentai just kept going, and then they did Jurain. Well, then they did Bioman, which Saban saw. Sorry, my phone ran out of storage this time. Had to delete some stuff. But keeping it turning, right? Keep it going. Saban saw Bioman. He's like, hey, that's pretty cool. Can we do a pilot? They did the pilot, and it got rejected, right? Then he went back to Japan. He saw Ranger, and he's like, man, I could do this, right? He went back, filmed the pilot, and it turned into Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the rest is history, right? I do kind of wonder what Sentai would have turned into had Power Rangers never come out. Like, part of me thinks they might have not even done Kyoryuger, Aba Ranger, or Ryu Soldier as much. Or maybe they would have done one of them, like maybe Aba Ranger, but maybe not Kyoryuger. They definitely wouldn't have done Q Ranger, and they probably wouldn't have done Ryu Soldier either. And we probably would have gotten more experimentation too, because I kind of feel like when Toei found out that Power Rangers was kind of ending for good, or at least cutting ties with Sentai, they started kind of more moving away from the Power Rangers image visually, which is why we had so many more experimental Sentai recently, like, you know, Dawn Brothers, or King Oger, or Zenkaiger, or now Boom Boomger isn't really as experimental, but it is pretty different when it comes to like the suits and how they look, right? Meanwhile, pretty much, yeah, just for the years that Power Rangers existed, all the suits was kind of samey for a while, with few exceptions, like, you know, Go Kaiger had the layering thing with the suits. Then there was Go Buses, which was pretty cool. Also had a Lupat and Pat Ranger. Lupat, so Lupin Pat Ranger, which was also kind of non-standard, but they did kind of conform to the Power Rangers image. But that's besides the point, right? It feels like Ranger is criticizing the corporate capitalistic machine that keeps on churning out these seasons over and over for the sake of money, which can kind of feel soulless a lot of the time, even though I'm not saying it is soulless, because a lot of these seasons, you know, they have love poured into them, right? They have passion. These people love Tokusatsu, they love what they're doing, but they are limited and like pushed down by the producers and the corporations that fund everything, right? The sponsors. They have to do what the sponsors want, right? Because, you know, you can't have Date dying off in O's and then just upsetting the kids and upsetting the sponsors, right? If I remember correctly, I heard Aba Ranger was kind of shot in the foot because people thought it was too dark with the Aba Ray Killer storyline. Haven't seen Aba Ranger, so I'm not exactly sure. But obviously Hibiki had the same thing going, where, you know, everyone knows it completely changed direction and halfway through. Kamen Rider Blade had a kind of a similar thing going, but it wasn't as big of a dramatic change as Hibiki. Same with Decade. God, who fucking knows what Decade was gonna turn out like originally? How Kiba too. But in the actual show Ranger Reject, manga Ranger Reject, you got the fact that a lot of the storylines in the actual like Toku show are influenced by the actual goings on of the actual battles, the Sunday battles, which are also manipulated by whoever's running the things behind the scenes. Yellow Keeper could be part of that. Red Keeper definitely isn't. We already know that. But whoever's running things behind the scenes is obviously in charge of these things, and also seemingly also manipulating the actual real life events, including the Sunday battles, based on what Yellow said. And based on what's been going on recently, I also think, you know, the invaders and everything was obviously invaded by humans, but probably, like, my theory currently, or just current working theory, is that the show was kind of, you know, falling off until someone did something crazy, probably the original Red Keeper, the original Sosei. Like they contacted the weird cult that Suzukira is from, and used their powers to create these enemies, these monsters, right? To turn humans into them. They were probably originally human. Who fucking knows? Erase their memories, mess with their bodies, right? Create these powers that turn people into executives, and then create the actual powers that turned the Rangers into the Rangers, right? Because normal humans would just get turned into monsters, but you need to be adapted. You need to have an adaptation surgery to be able to wield these powers and not turn into an executive, to actually be a keeper. That's what they established like 1 or 2 chapters ago, right? I imagine to have that ability, you need to be part of the cult, or to have that naturally without the surgery, you need to be part of the cult, right? That's my current theory. But again, this kind of harkens back to the original Kamen Rider thing, right? The good powers are born from the evil powers. But in this case, it's all really corrupted by how capitalism really, you know, turns everything good into something to be made to make money out of, and then if it doesn't make money, then who gives a fuck? And then it turns into an evil thing, even if it started being good, right? That's why I feel like Ranger Reject is more of a criticism of the Tokusatsu industry, or not industry, but the medium of Tokusatsu and how it's become a big capitalistic cash cow, rather than a criticism or parody of Sentai as a show, right? I think it's parodying its existence rather than its storylines, even though it does riff on a lot of its tropes and uses the tropes to enhance its own storytelling and the things it's trying to say, right? And so I'm not really a big fan of the Power Rangers with the boys narrative, because there's so much more to it, and you will realize this when reading the manga if you actually pay attention. Some people don't. Shout out Chainsaw Man fans, right? But as a Toku fan, it really jumps out at you more because you really realize these things. You really notice, like, oh, the Keepers are really old school, but the way they treat everything is really like modern. The way they manipulate all these storylines to fit what's going on, and in order to capitalize on them, it's really, you know. I don't know how else to say. I don't want to repeat myself. I know I repeat myself a lot. Thank y'all for sticking with me, by the way. But that's kind of how I think about it. And again, as a Tokusatsu fan, someone that started watching Tokusatsu after I got into Ranger Reject, I really appreciate it. I fucking love it. Especially seeing more and more of these influences. I remember the week that the Neo Rangers came out, V and a lot of the people that were scanlating Ranger Reject were like, oh, fans of a certain Tokusatsu show are gonna really be excited about this. I think he actually specifically said a certain Tokusatsu show that came out in this year, in 1 year specifically, and I don't remember if people actually predicted that it was gonna be Hibiki. But then when they actually showed the Neo Rangers, I was like, oh, holy fuck, it's Hibiki! It's these dudes! Oh, I was so excited, man. And again, I wonder if they're ever gonna do do Ultraman, but I also wonder if they're ever gonna do mechs. Maybe they'll summon the mechs like, you know, more organically, kind of like they do in King Oger, where they just say like, "Come here, mech," or like in Time Ranger, where they like shout into their little communicators like time jets. I think that's what they were called. And then they had the whole sequence. Or maybe it's like in some other Sentai, where they actually use like a toy to summon the mechs. Like in Dawn Brothers, use this, you know? Boom, 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 without fail. I really like playing with this thing. It's cool as fuck. I've also pre-ordered the Memorial Oger Caliber, so I'm excited about that. But I wonder if they're just gonna have a mech. They might have it in the future. Like hell, maybe they didn't summon it for the Death Messiah, so maybe they don't have one yet. But maybe in the future they'll get one and use it maybe in the final fight. Maybe the final fight is D as a giant monster against the Keepers' Megazord. That would be sick as fuck. That would be really fucking cool. But it's not something that I'm gonna hold my breath for. It's something that I'd like as a fan, but you know. Of course, also Ultraman stuff. You know, maybe D could transform into a giant, right? Who knows? But ultimately, I think what I'm trying to say is Ranger Reject isn't criticizing Tokusatsu. It's a love letter to Tokusatsu. Because you can tell Haruba fucking loves this shit. He loves what he's talking about. Right? He loves these tropes. He knows them so intimately. Like, there was the whole thing of like, oh, a man can't be Pink Keeper. Which is ironic because, you know, it's coming out, that chapter came out in the year of our Lord 2024. After Kijino, fucking Kiji brother, the first male Pink Ranger in Dawn Brothers. Right? Especially because the guy that was saying a male can't be Pink Keeper or can be Pink Keeper was like, he wasn't like skinny like Kijino is. He was like a big bulky dude. He was massive. Sorry, low battery. I'll try to make this brief so I don't have to record a fourth segment of this video. But again, what I'm saying is Ranger Reject is a love letter to Tokusatsu, and implying that it's just like insulting Tokusatsu, or it's just like Tokusatsu but in reverse. It's minimalistic, it's insulting, and it's very shallow way of viewing things. Although I also don't really blame people for thinking that, because most people, their only frame of reference is Power Rangers, and The Boys is a really popular recent show. So I don't blame them. I'm sure that usually it's not malicious. This is just their only frame of reference. But I would like more people to know that this show is just a love letter to this, right? It's also criticizing the companies behind them, but giving love to the actual shows, because you can tell that that in the text of Ranger Reject, the actual book, the Tokusatsu show is really well beloved by people. And it's, you know, the thing it's about really resonates with them. It gives people hope, right? And especially now, since you got D working with actual like humans and people that were once Rangers, it's about the message of, you know, working together. It's not about just the good guys are bad and the bad guys are good, right? It's kind of about criticizing the systems that really exploit these shows for money, and exploit what we're passionate about and what we love for money, to keep them going forever and ever and ever, while also appreciating the fact that these things give us something to love, right? Give us something to be inspired by, to live for, kind of sometimes. I love that. As a fan of Sentai, as a fan of Tokusatsu, and as a fan of anime, I fucking love Ranger Reject, man. It's something special. It's really, really fucking special. One day, I really hope we get a mainstream show that does a similar thing, but for Kamen Rider. I heard that Wheelchair Tank is something like that. I haven't checked that out yet. I should peep it. But again, Ranger Reject is something so special that I really hope people stop boiling it down to these really simple and dismissive descriptions. It's a work of love, it's a work of passion. And if you really look into it, then you'll find a lot of it is really well thought out. If you're a Ranger Reject fan and you haven't checked out any Sentai, or Power Rangers too, please don't get me wrong, I appreciate Power Rangers just as much as I do Sentai. Please give these shows a chance. I'll personally always recommend King Oger, right? It's my favorite tokusatsu of all time. But I'll also recommend Dawn Brothers. Dawn Brothers is amazing. Please check out these shows, Sentai, Power Ranger, if you love Ranger Reject. It's not going to be the same thing. Hell, most of them aren't even similar to it. But they're good. Just give them a chance, man. If you like the Neo Rangers, check out Kamen Rider. I'm not going to recommend Kamen Rider Hibiki for obvious reasons to anyone that knows about it, but fuck, man, check out any Kamen Rider season. The suits that look the coolest to you, check them out. And if you're a Tokusatsu fan, check out Ranger Reject. Don't let people turn you off of it by saying, oh, it's just like dark, edgy parody of The Boys. No, the fuck it's not. It's hopeful. It's really hopeful. Read Ranger Reject. Watch Tokusatsu. Maybe you'll find something to love that you haven't seen yet, right? And despite what some people might make you think about these communities, we're really welcoming. Tokusatsu, like I got into it last year, people accepted me with open arms. We just want more people to appreciate these shows. Alright, ran out of memory again, so very quick outro one last time. If you haven't checked out Tokusatsu, please check it out. If you haven't checked out Ranger Reject but you like Tokusatsu, please check it out, right? And one last thing, man, thank you for watching. Hopefully I get to editing and uploading this one quicker today. This one will have a lot more clips and videos than usual, but I feel like they're necessary and I also want to get better at editing. And yeah, just thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.